Have you ever wondered how NATO, one of the world's most powerful political and military alliances, came to be? Let's take a trip back to the mid-20th century. In the shadowy aftermath of the Second World War, Europe was in ruins, ravaged by the most devastating conflict in history. The continent's stability was hanging by a thread, and the looming specter of the Soviet Union's expansion was a cause for alarm. In the face of these threats, the idea of a collective defense pact started to take shape. The nations of Western Europe, along with the United States and Canada, began to see the need for a united front to safeguard their democratic societies. This seed of unity was the genesis of what we now know as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. A significant milestone in the formation of NATO was the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty on April 4, 1949. Representatives from 12 nations, including the United States, United Kingdom, France and Canada, gathered in Washington, D.C. to ink this historic document. This treaty marked an unprecedented commitment to mutual defense, encapsulated in its famous Article 5. An attack against one is considered an attack against all. In the immediate aftermath of the treaty signing, NATO established its integrated military command structure, which remains a distinctive feature of the alliance till today. Its headquarters were initially located in France but moved to Belgium in the late 60s. From its inception, NATO was more than just a military alliance. It was a community of nations sharing common democratic values committed to the principles of individual liberty, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Thus, in the ashes of a war-ravaged Europe, NATO was born as a beacon of collective defense and democratic values. This birth marked the beginning of a new chapter in global politics, one where nations stood together to ensure the preservation of peace and security for their citizens. And so, the stage was set for NATO's role in the unfolding drama of the Cold War, but that's a story for another time. But how did NATO evolve during the tense decades of the Cold War? In the immediate aftermath of World War II, the world found itself divided into two opposing blocs. On one side stood the United States and its allies, unified under the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. On the other, the Soviet Union and its satellite states, eventually forming their own alliance known as the Warsaw Pact. NATO during the Cold War was not merely a political alliance, it was a military one. Its primary purpose was to provide collective defense, meaning an attack on one member was considered an attack on all. This was a crucial deterrent against potential Soviet aggression. Throughout the Cold War, NATO expanded its membership, welcoming nations like Greece and Turkey in the early 50s, followed by West Germany in the mid-50s. This expansion, however, was not without controversy. The inclusion of West Germany, a former enemy, was seen by some as a provocative act, heightening tensions with the Soviet Union. Parallel to its expansion, NATO also developed its military structure. Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, or SHAPE, was established as the central command for all NATO military operations. This demonstrated NATO's commitment to a unified, integrated defense system, ready to respond to any potential threats. In response to NATO's growing strength, the Soviet Union and its allies formed the Warsaw Pact in 1955. This was a clear signal of the escalating tensions between the East and the West. However, NATO stood its ground. It continued to adapt and evolve, proving its resilience in the face of this new challenge. Despite the intense rivalry and periods of heightened tension, neither NATO nor the Warsaw Pact ever directly engaged in full-scale war with each other. This tense standoff, often referred to as the Long Peace, is considered one of the defining features of the Cold War. Against the backdrop of the Cold War, NATO solidified its position as a collective defense mechanism against potential aggression. The Cold War era shaped NATO into the robust, continuously evolving alliance it is today, demonstrating its capacity to adapt and respond to the ever-changing geopolitical landscape. So, what happened to NATO when its main adversary, the Soviet Union, collapsed? With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War in 1991 marked a pivotal moment for NATO. It was a time of transformation and redefinition. The end of the Cold War didn't mean the end of NATO. Instead, the organization underwent a significant metamorphosis, adapting to a new geopolitical landscape. NATO's main adversary was no longer, so the alliance had to redefine its purpose and mission. And it did so by focusing on three main areas: new strategic concepts, peacekeeping missions, and further expansion. Firstly, NATO introduced new strategic concepts. In 1999, it adopted a new strategic concept that expanded its purview beyond collective defense. This concept included crisis management and peacekeeping, thus allowing NATO to respond to a broader range of security challenges and threats. Secondly, NATO took on peacekeeping missions, marking a shift in its role from a purely defensive alliance to a security organization. The most notable of these was the International Security Assistance Force, or ISAF, in Afghanistan, which began in 2001. NATO also led peacekeeping missions in the Balkans, demonstrating its commitment to maintaining peace and stability in Europe. Lastly, NATO embarked on an ambitious expansion program. From its original 12 members, NATO has grown to include 30 members, encompassing countries from North America, Western Europe, and Eastern Europe. This expansion was a clear sign of NATO's commitment to collective security in the post-Cold War era. But all these changes didn't come without challenges. NATO had to grapple with doubts about its relevance and criticism about its new role and expansion. Yet, despite these obstacles, NATO has managed to stay relevant in an ever-changing world. Without the looming threat of the Soviet Union, NATO was forced to redefine its purpose and mission in the post-Cold War world. And redefine it did, evolving from a defensive alliance into a proactive force for peace and security. Its transformation in the post-Cold War era is a testament to its adaptability and resilience, hallmarks of an enduring alliance. But how has NATO adapted to the challenges of the 21st century? As the world entered a new millennium, NATO was faced with a new set of challenges, far removed from the traditional threat of Soviet invasion. The horrific attacks of September 11, 2001, marked a turning point in global security, prompting NATO to invoke Article 5 for the first time in its history. This article, the cornerstone of the alliance, states that an attack on one member is an attack on all. Consequently, NATO became a key player in the global war on terrorism, leading the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan. This marked a significant shift for the alliance. For the first time, NATO was engaged in combat operations outside of Europe, tackling a non-state actor. This was a far cry from the alliance's original mandate to protect the North Atlantic area from Soviet aggression. It was a clear sign of NATO's willingness to adapt to new security realities. The dawn of the digital age also presented new security threats, with cyber warfare becoming an increasingly prominent concern. Recognizing this, NATO has been proactive in bolstering its cyber defense capabilities. It established the Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, aimed at enhancing member states' cyber defense by facilitating cooperation and information sharing. Yet, while new threats have emerged, old ones have resurfaced. The relationship between NATO and Russia, which had seen a thaw in the post-Cold War era, has become increasingly strained in recent years. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its continued involvement in the Ukraine conflict has led to a resurgence in East-West tensions. In response, NATO has enhanced its presence in Eastern Europe, reaffirming its commitment to collective defense. The 21st century has proven to be a complex era for NATO, with a shifting security landscape requiring constant adaptation. Yet, through it all, the alliance has shown a remarkable ability to evolve and respond to these challenges. In the face of new security threats, NATO continues to adapt and evolve. What does the future hold for NATO? A question that piques curiosity and speculation alike. As we look ahead, NATO's future appears as a complex tapestry, woven with both challenges and opportunities. Emerging powers loom on the horizon, casting long shadows of uncertainty. Rapidly developing nations, each with their own unique set of strengths and agendas, have the potential to reshape the global power dynamics. How will NATO adapt to these shifting sands? Its ability to foster diplomatic relations and maintain strategic alliances with these new players will be crucial. The role of NATO in global security is another aspect that begs reflection. In a world riddled with unconventional threats from cyber warfare to terrorism, the nature of defense is evolving. Can NATO keep pace with these changes, redefine its strategies, and continue to be a pillar of security? Then there's the ongoing debate over NATO's relevance. Critics argue that NATO, a relic from the Cold War era, has outlived its usefulness. Yet, proponents counter that in an unpredictable world, the need for a robust collective defense mechanism is more pertinent than ever. As we ponder these complexities, it's clear that NATO's future is far from being a foregone conclusion. It's a fascinating journey full of uncertainties and potential. Will NATO adapt and evolve, or will it become a footnote in the annals of history? As NATO navigates an increasingly complex global landscape, its future remains both uncertain and intriguing. So, we've traveled through over 7 decades of NATO's history, but what have we learned? From its inception, NATO has played a pivotal role in maintaining global peace. It stood as a bulwark during the Cold War, adapted to post-Cold War transformations, and is continually evolving to meet 21st century challenges. The future might be uncertain, but NATO's commitment to collective defense remains steadfast. Thank you for joining this journey through NATO's history. If you found this video informative, please like, comment, and subscribe for more enlightening content.